Hi, thank you so much for this opportunity to share my experience in experiential learning in international business. Hopefully you will find it useful. Um, I never had thought that I would become so closely involved in experiential learning, but it was all basically an outcome of a serendipitous event. When I started teaching at this very university in North Carolina, um, I was trying to find a way to incorporate some experiential components to my international business course. And at that time, I just couldn't find a good way to do it. I looked at some case studies, I looked at some simulations, but none of them were really experiential. They were, just mere simulations of the real international business. So I would frequently find myself in the classroom in front of my students, trying to explain to them how, for example, cross-cultural differences work, how international interactions work, and they would just not really believe me, I guess, or not quite understand what I'm saying. It was almost like as if I was trying to teach them how to swim without letting them get in the water. So I was trying to find that way, that method that could allow them to get in the water, international business. And I thought maybe I could find a professor in a different country who also teaches international business, and we could team up our students, put them in international teams, and have them do, for example, homework together. And so they would work in international teams, and they would deal with the time zone differences, cultural differences, institutional differences, and some of the things they will learn in the process will be similar to the things, or will be the things that I'm trying to explain to them in the classroom. So one day, it's been about 6 years ago, from this very office, I sent out an email to the Academy of International Business members asking if anyone wants to work with me on this project, if anyone wants to team up his or her students with my students. I sent that email, went home, checked my email again in a few hours, and to my surprise, I got responses from all around the world. There were dozens and dozens of responses, and some people would say, oh, it's a little too late for me to change the schedule for this semester, but I'll definitely participate next semester. And many people said, oh, yes, definitely, let's participate this semester. So the first time we did this collaboration project, we had about 500 students from 7 universities, 7 different countries. Since then, the project has been growing very, very fast. Today, this semester, for example, we have almost 5,000 students, 140 universities, about 45 countries, all 6 continents, all major island groups represented. And so now we call this project X-Culture, cross-culture, I guess, X-Culture. And so the idea for this project was originally very, very simple. The idea was that we would take those students and put them in international teams, and they would just work across cultural borders, cultures, national borders, time zones. One thing I didn't expect then, but it became now a common day, everyday common occurrence, is that I thought I would have only one professor in a different country, and my students will work with students from one other country. Now the project is so big that we can actually make those teams quite diverse. So we usually have teams of about 6 to 7 students, and usually every student comes from a different location. We may have 2 students from the United States, different states, and everybody else is from a different country. So there would be 4, 5, 6, 7 different countries per team. So students would have to work with people not just from another country, but literally with people from just about every continent and multiple countries. And so that worked very well. So students would learn about new cultures, would try to communicate internationally, learn about different institutional differences. So that was very useful. And so for all these years, one of the big benefits of X-Culture has been this cross-cultural experience. But it's not limited to that. Other wonderful things started happening at some point. For example, about 4 years ago, real companies started coming to us with real life challenges, questions. Our very first partner was Mercedes-Benz, and their question was, how can we design trucks for developing countries? And how can we sell those trucks in developing countries? Since then, we have worked with a number of other companies, some big, some small. The bigger ones that you probably know would be Louis Vuitton, the company that makes expensive bags and other fashion items. And so their question was literally, where should we open the next store or stores? And how should we design them to make them appealing to the customers in that location? And so their expectation was, well, you have students all around the planet. If there are locations where there are rich buyers and where there is a need for a store like Louis Vuitton's, somebody would know about that. And so many students did provide their suggestions. Or, for example, the Home Depot, they were asking for input on how to improve their .com services and expand beyond North America. We tried to select companies that are medium in size, about 5 to 10 of them. And the reason we would prefer to work with medium companies is because large companies like Mercedes-Benz, like Louis Vuitton, they are interested in our input, but honestly, there is not that much that students can tell them that they don't know already. These are companies that operate all around the planet, and they have a lot of international experience. So students can tell them only so much that they don't know. When you look at the medium-sized companies, these are very interesting. So the beauty of those companies is that they already do well in their local market, and they already have the capacity to expand and scale up and go into other markets. But they don't have the expertise, they don't have the experience to identify the most promising markets and develop the strategy of the market entry. And so this is where our students come in handy. So most of the clients, most of the partners, I guess I should call them, would ask for things like this. Conduct a competition analysis and tell us how we compare to our competition. What are our strengths and weaknesses? What are the threats and opportunities we face? Then once you know how we compare to the competition, try to find or determine what new markets would be promising for a company like this. So basically conduct market analysis, identify most promising new markets, and then describe that market to us. Its culture, its economy, its politics, religion, traditions, whatever we need to know to be successful and operate successfully in that market. Then once the market is determined and analyzed, advise us on the best market entry strategy. Should we just export there? Should we form some sort of a joint venture? Maybe try franchising? Maybe try to establish a wholly owned subsidiary? Tell us what's the best way to enter that market. If we have to hire people there, would we need to use expatriates? Would we hire locals, maybe third country nationals? What would be the best way to recruit and select those employees? What are the local labor law requirements, compensation, optimal scheme that will ensure that people are equally motivated and at the same time committed to the job, and at the same time we're not spending too much money on this endeavor. Marketing strategy, this is a big one. What is the best way to reach the decision makers in the new market? And then what is the message? How should we advertise ourselves? This is where students often come very handy. We've had a number of companies that would not have a big marketing budget, that would not have the resources to advertise on TV or newspapers. In fact, in many cases, it would not even be feasible because the decision makers would be people who are not a general public. Like, for example, this semester we have a company called Unplug, and this company develops software for detecting plagiarism. And this software is usually bought by schools, universities. So principals of the schools, maybe, I don't know, some sort of procurement department or maybe some purchasing department. So it's not your general public. And so the students are able or were able to identify a number of ways to reach those decision makers that would not be very costly and at the same time would be very effective. Like, for example, there are mailing lists for principals of schools in certain countries or counties. And it's free to send a message through that list and reach the decision makers that you need. Or, for example, scholarly conferences. If you would like to talk to professors, that's the best way to go. So in many cases, students are able to identify distribution methods or promotion methods in certain countries that a company could have not known possibly on their own. But once students tell them, they're like, oh, this is almost free, and this covers all our possible clients. So it works very well. And then obviously the marketing message to make sure that, the brand name sounds appealing in the local culture, that the message is congruent with the local culture and expectations and things like that. Then many companies also ask about logistics, advice on the best way to move products, and questions of that kind. So if you teach international business, you probably have noticed that all of those topics basically followed a standard textbook in international business, chapter by chapter. And so here students get two types of benefits. On the one hand, as I said, they experience the challenges and learn the best practices of international collaboration. So this is all about cross-cultural HROB, right? But then on the other hand, they actually deal a lot with the international business strategy. And so they essentially complete a consulting project with real clients, real companies, real challenges, real people on the other end of the wire who ask for your advice, and then if it's good, then they will actually implement it. And so that makes it much more practical, much more appealing, much more educational, developmental for the students. Now, during the project, it's not only the words that you have a company. So the CEOs of those companies have regular webinars with the students. They would meet live and answer questions, provide additional information, listen to students' presentations and input, provide some feedback. If students cannot attend the webinar live, which obviously for many students is the case, we have different time zones, and no matter what time you choose, not everyone will be able to attend. We record those, and students can watch them later. They can always send a question to the company, get the answer. So it's a real consulting project in which you have a real client and you communicate with that client. So you get the human experience or interaction experience, but you also have the business experience. Very useful. Then other things started happening about 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago. We have launched what we call the X-Culture coaching program. The way that came about is many students at the end of the semester would come to me and say something like this: Professor, I really liked this project. I learned a lot. I would like to learn more. Can I work with you in some way so I can continue gaining this international business experience? And so what we offered those students is that they can become coaches to the new generation of X-Culture students. And so this semester, for example, we have about 40 people who did very well last semester. And then they had to take additional theoretical training in international business coaching. They had to learn how, for example, provide effective feedback, or how to deal with cross-cultural communication, online collaboration tools, conflict resolution. So there are a total of 12 training modules that they had to complete. Then they had to take a test. We want to make sure that they're fully qualified. And when they did, they now work with students, members of global virtual teams, trying to help them be more effective as global virtual team members. So if there is a problem, coaches will advise. If there is a challenge, they will help resolve it. If students would like to receive feedback on their work, coaches can provide that feedback. So this is a very useful service for the students, but it's a wonderful, great experience for the coaches, because the coaches, in this case, receive the type of training that not even every manager has. They're basically working, mentoring, supervising global virtual teams, and not one, many of them. So in this one semester, they gain the type of experience that many managers will never even have. And so this is a very useful thing when you're applying for jobs. It definitely differentiates you from the crowd. And then many students use X-Culture data to do research. We just had last week the 4th PhD dissertation defended using the X-Culture data. There are 4 or 5 more currently in development. But then there are also many students that are not doctoral students who use our data for research purposes. For example, there are a number of students who use our qualitative data to analyze how, what kind of challenges the teams deal with, how those attitudes and challenges change over time. So much of this research does not require advanced statistical knowledge. You just read the comments, read the information provided by the students, and you see trends right away. And so many students use that for their, as I said, doctoral dissertation, master's thesis, honors projects, or just simply to strengthen their resume. So I can talk about it all day, but what I'm trying to say here is that today, experiential learning is a must because the world is becoming more and more complex. And you can talk all day about, the use of virtual collaboration tools to be a member of a global virtual team, but until students try it, they will never quite understand how it works. Same thing with consulting. Until you actually try it, you will never quite understand it. But at the same time, this is the best time to do it because at this time we have all the tools available for online collaboration, cross-border collaboration. So for example, a project like X-Culture wouldn't be possible even 10 years ago. At that time, we just didn't have the tools. I would have to write a code, create a platform where students can communicate, or maybe leave it up to the email for them to communicate, which wouldn't be, real collaboration. Now we have all those tools: Google Docs, Dropbox, Moodle, Doodle, Basecamp, Trello, Slack, Viber, WhatsApp, Facebook. All of them make collaboration almost as real as face-to-face. In fact, in many respects, even better sometimes, because it allows you to co-edit the same file at the same time. And if you work with paper, you can't really do that. So we have those wonderful, wonderful tools. And so as long as you would like to offer your students this opportunity, first, you can join X-Culture. We welcome everyone as long as your students have the basic knowledge of English and the basic knowledge of international business. Or you can start your own project. It's fairly easy to do these days. So I strongly encourage you to give it a try. You will be at some points frustrated and you will be like, oh, why did I get into this? Students ask so many questions. There are so many challenges. But in the end, I guarantee you, your students and you will actually be very happy that you did it. In the end, students always say, yes, it was tough, but it was very, very educational. If I had to do it again, or when I do it again as part of my job, I'll definitely be better prepared. So I strongly encourage you to give it a try. I'll be happy to give you more information if you would like to. Just send me an email and I'll be happy to help you. And good luck. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them by email, or if we have a direct link now, hopefully we'll be able to talk about via Skype. Thank you.